Good afternoon, class. Today we're going to be talking about copyright protection and fair use. The reason why we're talking about this today is going to be an overview of copyright laws and protections in order to better prepare you for your upcoming projects that you'll be working on soon. So let's first talk about the definition of copyright. The United States Copyright Act was signed into law on October 19, 1976, and went into effect on January 1st, 1978. Under the law, protection was granted to original works of authorship and any tangible medium of expression. These 8 mediums are listed here. So these mediums include literary works, and these are all copyrighted when created by an author. So literary works, musical works, dramatic works, pantomimes and choreographic works, pictorial, graphic, and sculptural works, motion pictures and other audio-visual works, sound recordings, and architectural works. So these are the 8 mediums that a person could create something under, and it would be copyrighted. So let's first take a look at literary works. When we talk about literary works, we are talking about anything that's intended to be read. A literary work is a work that explains, describes, or narrates a particular subject, theme, or idea through the use of narrative, descriptive, or explanatory text. So now that you know the definition, well, what are some actual examples of a literary work? We're talking about fiction, nonfiction, poetry, textbooks, reference works, directories, catalogs, advertising copy, compilations of information, computer programs, and databases. Next, let's talk about musical works. So, when we're talking about copyrighted musical works, this is going to include any accompanying words or fixed or words that are fixed in a tangible medium of expression. Musical works include original compositions and original arrangements. So, when we look at examples of what that might include, we're talking about the melody and the lyrics of any piece of musical composition. Those are going to be copyrighted under law. Moving over to dramatic works. Performing a dramatic work means to recite, render, play, dance, or act out, either directly or by means of any device or process. So, an example of a dramatic piece that would be copyrighted would be plays and screenplays, scripts, choreographic notation, choreographic shows, and scenarios for a film, but not the film itself. That's going to be copyrighted under motion pictures. So, next, let's take a look at pantomimes and choreographic works. When we talk about this type of copyright, we're talking about the composition and arrangement of related series of dance movements and patterns organized into a coherent whole. Pantomime is the art of imitating, presenting, or acting out situations, characters, or events through the use of physical gestures and bodily movements. Examples of these types of work would be rhythmic movements, a series of dance movements or patterns organized into integrated, coherent, and expressive compositional whole, and a story, theme, or abstract composition conveyed through movement. Continuing on to pictorial, graphic, and sculptural works. There's a wide variety of pictorial, graphic, and sculptural works that all fall under the category of visual arts. So, examples here could be two-dimensional and three-dimensional works of fine, graphic, and applied art. Think of sculptures that are actually formed and made, photographs, prints, and art reproductions, maps and globes, charts and diagrams, models, and technical drawings. As we continue down the infographic, we'll move on to motion pictures and other audio visual works. Now, this section of copyright works contains a series of related images that are intended to be shown with a projector, a digital display, or other device. When the images are shown in successive order, they create an impression of movement that is perceptible to the eye. So, of course, these ones are the ones we're most familiar with. We see these every single day when we watch something. So, including movies, television shows, video games, animations, and similar types of works intended to be seen and heard with a projector, digital display, or other device, such as an iPad or your phone. Moving on to the seventh medium is sound recordings. Sound recordings are actually copyrighted by law. When we talk about sound recordings, we're talking about works that result from the fixation of a series of musical, spoken, or other sounds. So when we talk about examples of what is actually copyrighted under sound recordings, we're including singing a song or playing a musical instrument, reading a book or delivering a lecture, hosting a podcast or performing a radio play, a person speaking, a dog barking, a bird singing, wind chimes ringing, or other sounds from the natural world. Last but not least, we have architectural works. When we talk about architectural work, we're including the overall form as well as the arrangement and composition of spaces and elements in the design. So everything copyrighted under architectural works would be buildings that were designed and built by an architect, architectural plans or drawings. The work includes the overall form as well as the arrangement of the spaces and elements in the design. So those are all 8 mediums. When we look at copyright, things that are created and made by an author, all of these types of mediums and examples are protected under copyright. We give credit to the author who made them. Now, there's another really important piece to copyright that I want to touch on, and that's fair use. Now, this comes into play when we're in the classroom together. We're in an educational setting. Fair use is described as explicitly applying the use of copyrighted work for criticism, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research purposes. The Act gives 4 factors to be considered to determine whether a particular use is a fair use. So these are the 4 categories right here of fair use. So we're going to look at purpose and character of the use, the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount and sustainability of the portion used to the work as a whole, and the effect of the use on the potential market. So let's start with the first one here. So fair use in regards to purpose and character. Using copyrighted work for an educational objective is more likely to be considered fair use than using it for commercial gain and entertainment. Okay, next is the nature of the copyrighted work. General reading materials, such as a magazine or a periodical or even a newspaper, would qualify as fair use. Works of entertainment or designed for education, such as cartoons or movies or even scholastic news, would not be considered for fair use because it comes in conflict with the money that they make when they produce those types of mediums. Okay, now let's go to the third for fair use, which is amount and sustainability of the portion used to the work as a whole. Using a smaller amount of copyrighted work is more likely to be considered fair use than using a larger piece of the work. So that goes back to when you guys have learned about paraphrasing and citing your references. You're using a small portion of the work, which is considered fair use. Now, last but not least, we have the effect of the use on the potential market. If using a copyrighted work negatively affects sales and revenue of the original work, it will not be considered fair use. For example, something in this category might be if I copy a chapter of a book and I distribute it to you as a class every single year, and it goes with one of our discussion themes. If I use something every single year, that one chapter, that actually is negatively impacting the sales of that author's production because I'm not buying it, I'm using it every single year. I'm kind of cheating the system there. So that would be an example of having a negative effect on the potential market. Some of the resources that I used was the website for the U.S. Copyright Office for this infographic. I used a wiki that was targeted from the entertainment section and the textbook written by Smaldino. Thank you so much for listening to this copyright presentation.